The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The breathing stops, not gradually, not the slow fade of a man slipping under. It simply stops. One mechanical exhale, then nothing. Then a boy's lungs seizing with the first involuntary breath they've taken in over 40 years without being told. Wrong. Everything is wrong. The air enters too easily. No resistance. No hiss of pressurized filters cycling through a respirator the size of a small engine. Just air, warm and sweet with something flowering outside. Night blooming something. Naboo probably. The smell hitting him before anything else does, and cracking open a memory he doesn't have yet. His chest expands without effort. His heart beats without assistance. 2 beats, then 3, and each one feels obscene in its ease, a biological fact so ordinary it registers as violence. Darth Vader had not breathed on his own since he was 22 years old. He does not move. A veteran's first instinct: assess before you act. He is standing. His legs are holding him without the suit's hydraulic support, which means they are working, which means the hands. He looks down. Small, unscarred, the left one unmarked, which means it is real, which means he is real, which means this is not the dying hallucination of a broken man on the floor of an Emperor's shuttle. 9 years old. The math arrives without sentiment. The victory celebration for Naboo. 32 BB. He has gone back 32 years before the Battle of Yavin, and 36 years before the moment Luke pulled him out of that suit and showed him what his own face looked like. The numbers settle in his chest like dropped stones. The noise of the celebration presses in around him. Music, laughter, the particular bright chatter of people who survived something and cannot stop reminding themselves of it. Children, somewhere. The hall is lit with warm amber, and across the polished floor, amid the cluster of dignitaries and Republic officials arranged in their careful formations of importance, a man is moving toward him. He knows the gait before he sees the face. Patient, unhurried, the walk of a man who has nowhere to be because time itself works for him. 46 years of memory ignite behind a 9-year-old's eyes. Mustafar, the heat. The sand on the bank and his legs in the fire, and Padmé's face through the Force, already going cold on a ship above him. The suit descending. The first mechanical breath. The Emperor's laughter at the question, "Where is Padmé?" A laugh that had no cruelty in it, because it didn't need to. It was simply the sound a man makes when a mechanism performs as designed. The Death Star. The rebel girl with her mother's eyes and her mother's jaw and her mother's voice saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi," and him standing there, watching, knowing, doing nothing. Luke on a bridge above a reactor shaft, one hand gone. Luke on the Death Star floor looking up at him. "I know there is good in you." The Emperor's lightning. His son's body. His own hands lifting Palpatine. These hands. These 9-year-old hands that have done nothing yet. Lifting him and throwing him and spending every last cell of a dying body on one true thing before the dark came in. All of it. 46 years. In the time it takes Sheev Palpatine to cross a ballroom, he is going to kill him. The thought arrives complete and cold, the way tactical assessments always did. Not a feeling, but a conclusion. He is 9 years old and standing in a hall full of witnesses, and the man who will destroy his life is 3 seconds away. And he is going to kill him with his bare hands and damn every consequence that follows. He doesn't. Because Vader is not Anakin. He learned that distinction in fire. The man who wanted to kill Palpatine was Anakin Skywalker, impulsive and heartbroken, and always, always too late. The man who could actually do it was someone who had spent 23 years as the Emperor's enforcer, learning exactly how Palpatine thought, what he feared, what he had never once seen coming. The galaxy didn't need a dead Palpatine. The galaxy needed him exposed, cornered, stripped of every asset and ally before the end came, so that nothing he built survived him. 3 seconds. He builds the mask. He has never done it consciously before. The concept crystallizes from fragments, force-sensitive minds shielding against telepathic intrusion, Sith compartmentalization techniques, things Palpatine himself had taught him and used against him without Anakin ever understanding the shape of the weapon. He constructs it now the way he once constructed battle plans, with his back against a wall and no margin for error. A surface layer, a performance. All the things a 9-year-old boy from Tatooine should be feeling on the night his planet got liberated. Awe, excitement, exhaustion, pride, the texture of a child who is trying very hard not to show how much the attention means to him. He places it over everything. The memories, the grief, the 46 years. His head throbs. The effort is physical, a tightness behind his eyes like pressure building in a sealed compartment, and he understands immediately that this will have a cost. It already does. He files that information where it belongs and holds the mask steady. Palpatine arrives. Up close, he is smaller than Vader remembers him. The Chancellor's robes are deep burgundy, his face still carrying the remnants of a handsome man's bone structure before age, and the dark side wore it down to what it would become. He looks distinguished, kind, almost, the studied warmth of a public servant who has made being underestimated into a 40-year career strategy. He smiles at the boy in front of him with the measured affection of a man who has already decided the boy is interesting. The boy looks back at him. Behind the mask, something immense and cold and very still regards the man who killed Padmé Amidala. Young Skywalker. The voice is warm velvet. I have heard extraordinary things. The pilots speak of almost nothing else. A boy who flew a Naboo fighter alone and destroyed the droid control ship from within. He tilts his head with practiced delight, as though the information astonishes and delights him in equal measure. Quite remarkable. I got lucky, Your Excellency, the boy says. The boy's voice is steady, humble, perfectly calibrated. Palpatine's smile deepens. He is already reading the hunger he expects to find. A slave boy, fatherless, desperate for approval, offering self-deprecation as an opening bid. He has run this pattern before. He knows how it ends. He knows nothing. Luck, Palpatine repeats gently, is what lesser men call the Force's favor when it reveals itself in someone they cannot explain. He leans in, just slightly. Conspiratorial, a secret shared with the only one in the room worth sharing it with. Do not diminish what you are, young man. The galaxy produces precious few like you. The boy holds his gaze and says nothing for one beat. 2. Thank you, Your Excellency, Anakin says. And inside the mask, in the dark behind the performance, the vow forms, quiet and absolute and nothing like rage. Not I will kill you. Not I will make you suffer. Something slower and more terrible than either. I will not kill you. I will unmake you. Everything you built, everyone you turned, every piece you moved. I will find it all, and I will take it apart, and at the end there will be nothing left of you but the truth of what you are, and the Republic will see it. Palpatine drifts away. Other dignitaries. Other conversations. He moves through the room the way water moves downhill, finding the lowest point in every interaction, and he never looks back at the boy. That night, alone in a guest quarter of the Naboo Palace, a modest room, clean stone walls and a window overlooking the lake, the water black and glittering under a moon he has no memory of ever stopping to look at. Anakin Skywalker sits on the edge of a bed and weeps. Not from fear, not from the vertigo of displacement or the horror of what lies ahead. He weeps because the Force is here. Present in every cell of this unbroken body, unfiltered, unobstructed, not squeezed through damaged tissue and mechanical joints and the constant low static of a suit that kept him alive by reminding him every second that he should not be. The Force moves through him the way it did when he was a child in the desert and did not have a name for it yet. Clean, vast, like standing at the edge of something that has no end. And because Padmé is alive, somewhere on this planet, at 14, unknowing, present, not yet met. He presses his palms against his eyes, small, smooth palms that have not yet held a lightsaber or a throat, and breathes the night air of Naboo, and gives himself until dawn to feel all of it. At dawn, he will begin. The Jedi Temple smells like stone and silence. Not the silence of empty places, the silence of 10,000 people choosing, collectively and constantly, to move through the world at a lower volume than it deserves. The halls are wide and cool, lit by light that seems to come from the walls themselves, and in the mornings before the cliché wakes. The only sounds are footsteps, and the distant hum of the city outside the transparistile, muffled to something almost like wind. Anakin learns the temple the way he once learned the inside of a star destroyer, systematically, at odd hours, finding the gaps in the pattern. He is patient. That is the first thing his instructors notice, and it unsettles them in ways they are too disciplined to voice directly. Master Dralig passes him in the lightsaber training corridor and marks something on his datapad. Master Yoda watches him during meditation with those half-closed eyes that miss nothing and says nothing for 3 days. And then says, settled, your mind is unusual. This is, for one your age. He says it the way a physician names a symptom. Anakin smiles and says he has been practicing. His fellow initiates are 9 and 10 years old. They worry about their trials, their friendships, the hierarchy of the training groups, who Master Yoda looked at for a fraction of a second longer than the others. They are children. He watches them the way an old soldier watches children play at war, with genuine affection and a grief so deep it has no bottom. Obi-Wan finds him on the eastern observation deck one evening, watching the Coruscant traffic move in its endless streams below. He stands beside him for a moment before speaking. That is a thing Anakin had forgotten about him. Young Obi-Wan, a Jedi Knight by only the most recent margin, already had the quality of comfortable silence. He never filled a room with noise just to occupy it. You've been here 4 months, Obi-Wan says finally. Not an accusation. An offering. Yes, Master Kenobi. You can call me Obi-Wan. We're not that formal yet. A pause. How are you finding it? Anakin considers the answer with more care than Obi-Wan can know. He finds it smaller than he expected. He finds it exactly as he remembers. The smell, the light, the specific weight of the air in the upper halls. He finds it unbearable and precious in almost equal measure. It's a good place, he says. Obi-Wan looks at him for a moment. You're a strange boy, Anakin, I've been told. I mean it as a compliment. He says it simply, and Anakin believes him, and something in his chest aches with the specific, familiar pain of loving someone who doesn't know you yet. He starts working the credits 4 months after arriving. The temple's terminal access is less restricted than it should be for a facility housing children with no legitimate financial needs. A security assumption that has never been tested because it has never needed to be. Anakin tests it carefully. Not the financial systems directly, those are layered and logged. But the temple's administrative network connects to the Republic Education Database, which connects to a trade guild licensing registry, which connects, after 3 more lateral moves, to a proxy-accessible commercial banking node that carries no biometric requirement if the access code is current. He works at night, 2 hours before dawn, in an alcove near the archive sublevel where the light sensors have a dead zone and the foot traffic is 0. He was a 9-year-old slave who built a protocol droid from salvage and a pod racer from scavenged parts in secret. Beneath his owner's notice, the skills translate. It takes him 6 weeks to establish the first shell account. A defunct Outer Rim shipping concern, Dark Sand Freight Collective, Mos Espa registered, dissolved 8 years ago, with dormant licensing credentials still cycling through the guild renewal system on an automated loop. He reactivates it, quietly, with credentials that belong to a dead company's dead owner. Then he finds the pod racing syndicate's bookkeeping subsidiary, the one that runs the Bunta Eve betting pools, and begins to pull threads. Not steal, not directly. He routes a series of transaction discrepancies, genuine discrepancies, errors in the syndicate's own ledgers. Credits that exist in 2 places at once due to sloppy double-entry accounting, into the shell account, then out again through 2 additional transit nodes, arriving finally in a clean, untraceable liquid account registered to Darksand's forwarding address in Mos Espa. The syndicate's accountants will never find the gap. He knows because he knows how Tatooine operates. And Tatooine operates on the assumption that no one is watching carefully enough to care. He was born there. He knows every shadow. By the time he has enough, not a fortune, but enough, 60,000 credits, sufficient for 2 passages off-planet, sustained accommodation, legal documentation, and a generous safety margin, he has a second problem. He cannot go. He is 9 years old, a Jedi initiate, under the supervision of the Temple and the implicit oversight of the Council. He cannot simply leave for Tatooine. He cannot explain why he needs to. He cannot do this himself. He needs someone else's hands. He finds her through a contact chain that takes another 3 weeks. Not a name he knew in his previous life. Someone new. Or rather someone who existed in the margins of his life before, and never crossed his path. Her name is Sorel Mok. She is a Murialan woman, 40-something, with the faded tattoos of a culture she has mostly left behind, and a reputation in the right outer rim networks as someone who solves logistical problems for clients who cannot be present. She is not a bounty hunter. She is not an assassin. She is something more useful, a woman who is very good at finding people and moving them from one place to another without documentation or incident. He contacts her through the shell account. Text only. A single message, precise and brief, a name, a planet, a location in Mos Espa, a task, a number, and a delivery address. He asks no questions about her methods. He adds a second number at the bottom, double the first, paid on delivery, and waits. She writes back in 4 hours. Straightforward, done in 3 weeks. He transfers the first payment and sits back in the dark alcove and breathes. 22 days later, Shmi Skywalker arrives on Alderaan. He feels it through the Force the moment it happens. Not a vision, not a message, just the particular easing of a pressure he had been holding in his body for months, without fully acknowledging. A stone lifted. She is alive. She is off Tatooine. She is somewhere with clean air and no owner and enough credits to build something real. He is sitting in a meditation session with his instructors when it happens. He does not move. He does not react. He keeps his eyes closed, and his breathing slow, and Master Dralig, watching the initiates cycle through their forms, sees only a composed boy holding stillness like he was born knowing how. That night, alone, he permits himself 60 seconds. He sits on the edge of his bunk in the dark and holds her face in his memory, not the face in the Lars homestead, gray and ruined from years of captivity, and finally broken on a raid he arrived too late to prevent. The face from before. Mos Espa. Morning light. Her hands on his shoulders, looking at him with the specific love of a woman who has given up everything except one thing. And that one thing is leaving. Will I ever see you again? He had said yes. He had been lying because he had to. She had known he was lying and had let him because she had to. The memory lives in the part of him the mask cannot touch. She is alive. She does not know why. She will never know it was him. He cannot tell her, not now, not while the long game requires invisibility, not while one unexplained act of generosity toward his mother could give Palpatine a thread to pull. 60 seconds. Then he sets the memory aside, turns it face down in the archive where he keeps the things he is not permitted to feel yet, and lies down in the dark. Tomorrow, Obi-Wan will ask him to demonstrate his lightsaber progress. He will underperform, slightly a calibrated clumsiness in his offhand transitions that a boy his age would plausibly still be working on. He has already mapped which mistakes a gifted 9-year-old makes. He will make those mistakes, in order, with the painstaking precision of a man who spent 20 years fighting with a blade and knows exactly what controlled imperfection looks like. He closes his eyes. The Force settles around him like water finding its level. His mother is alive. For tonight, that is enough. The Chancellor's office smells like old power. Not the sharp ozone of a command bridge or the antiseptic cold of a temple hall. Something older, layered. The accumulated weight of 10,000 decisions made in the same room over decades. The furniture is dark wood, real wood, imported at a cost that would feed an outer rim colony for a year. The windows look out over the Senate district, and in the afternoons the light comes through at an angle that makes everything in the room glow amber, warm and false, like something preserved in resin. Anakin sits across from Palpatine and performs attentiveness. The meetings began 3 months after Naboo, framed as mentorship, the Chancellor's informal interest in the boy hero of the blockade, a generous gesture of civic engagement toward a remarkable young talent. The Council approved it with mild enthusiasm. Yoda said nothing at the session where it was discussed, which Anakin noted and filed. Palpatine is explaining the history of the Galactic Senate's committee structure. He has been explaining it for 11 minutes. His voice carries the cadences of a man who learned long ago that information delivered slowly, with warmth, feels like intimacy. He pauses at intervals to invite questions, to lean forward, to make the boy feel that this particular Senate procedural history is the most important thing in the room. Anakin asks a question about the Appropriations Committee. Palpatine's eyes brighten. The brightness is completely genuine, not the warmth, which is constructed, but the pleasure, which is real. He enjoys this. The finding of the crack and the work of widening it. Anakin has understood this about him since Mustafar. Palpatine is not a man who pretends to enjoy manipulation. He simply enjoys it. Astute, Palpatine says. Most adults never think to ask that. The Appropriations Committee is where the Senate's real architecture lives, not in the grand debates, not in the floor votes. Power, young Anakin, lives in the unglamorous rooms. Is that where you learned it? Anakin asks. The unglamorous rooms? A pause. One beat too long, almost invisible. Palpatine smiles. I had good teachers, he says. Behind the mask, Anakin catalogues the pause, the precise shape of the smile, the slight recession of warmth in the eyes beneath it. He has been cataloging for months. Not because he needs the information immediately. He knows more about Palpatine than Palpatine has told anyone alive, but because the cataloging is the point. Each small, unconscious tell mapped and filed. Each deviation from the performance noted. He is building a portrait of the man beneath the mask from the inside, the way a surgeon works. Not cutting, just watching. Learning the anatomy of the lie before deciding where to make the incision. He nods at the answer about good teachers as if it satisfies him. He starts pulling threads on Palpatine's financial infrastructure the following week. Not directly, never directly. He has thought carefully about the architecture of what he is building, evidence that can survive scrutiny. Documentation that arrives at the Council through channels they trust, a case assembled so thoroughly that when it lands it is inarguable. He cannot simply accuse. He is a child. A child's accusation against the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic is not a weapon. It is a target. The threads are small to begin with. A discrepancy in the public record of Palpatine's campaign financing from his Naboo senatorial run, 12 years back. A shell company registered on Eriadu that appears briefly in a Trade Federation subsidiary's audited accounts, and then vanishes. A property transfer on Coruscant's lower levels, documented under a name that shares 3 consecutive letters with a known Sith artifact dealer the Jedi Temple's own records flagged, and then quietly closed the file on 8 years ago. Individually, nothing. Threads without fabric. He begins to weave. The terminal work is more complex than the Tatooine operation. Fewer gaps in the security architecture. More layers between the public record and the interesting information beneath it. He adapts. He is not hacking so much as reading, moving through the Republic's vast administrative database the way he once read the wind on a pod racer course, looking for the places where the pattern breaks, where something has been smoothed over with too much care, where the documentation is a fraction too clean. The mask costs him more during this period. The concentration required to hold it while also working the terminal in the dead alcove hours creates a compound fatigue that sits behind his eyes and doesn't fully lift during sleep. He adjusts his meditation practice to compensate. Using the sessions the instructors assign him to do something the instructors are not monitoring, not the temple's standard techniques, but the deeper Sith meditation disciplines Palpatine taught him 20 years from now, repurposed, turned inward, used to repair what the mask costs him rather than to draw from the dark side. The irony sits comfortably. He has stopped being surprised by ironies. Obi-Wan formally takes him as a Padawan 6 months after Naboo. The ceremony is modest, the council chamber, morning light, the quiet ritual of it. Obi-Wan speaks the words with a sincerity that is not performed, and Anakin, standing before him, feels the specific grief of receiving something he already knows how to lose. Walking out of the chamber, Obi-Wan puts a hand briefly on his shoulder. The same gesture, the same weight, the same particular warmth of a man constitutionally incapable of withholding affection even when dignity argues for it. Anakin remembers that hand. He remembers it on a burning bank above a lava river, retreating. He remembers it in a different sense now. Present. Unscorched. Belonging to someone who has not yet been hurt by him. Well, Obi-Wan says, in the corridor after. I suppose I'm responsible for you now. I'll try not to make that difficult, Anakin says. Obi-Wan's mouth does the thing. The slight compression that precedes the dry remark, which was always, even when Anakin was too young and angry to recognize it, a form of love. You've already been disturbingly easy, he says. I find it deeply suspicious. I can knock something over if it would help. Obi-Wan laughs. It comes out surprised, genuine, and then settles into something quieter. He looks at Anakin with an expression Anakin cannot quite read yet. Something between warmth and that slow, growing unease that will become the emotional spine of their next 10 years. You're a strange boy, Anakin, he says, for the second time. He will keep saying it. He will eventually understand why. The first significant piece lands in the 8th month, a financial record connecting a Coruscant shell company to the funding stream that originally commissioned the clone army on Kamino, not a smoking blaster, but a link solid enough to survive a Jedi archivist's scrutiny. Anakin wraps it in 3 additional layers of corroborating documentation and routes it through a method he has spent 2 months engineering. An anonymous tip delivered to the Jedi Temple's intelligence intake through a proxy node registered to a defunct journalists' cooperative on Corellia, timed to arrive during Master Windu's administrative rotation, when the intake log goes to him first. Mace Windu is the right target for this material. Not because he trusts Anakin, he doesn't, particularly, which is part of why he is useful. He is suspicious by disposition, structurally resistant to the charm offensive that neutralizes most of the Council's concerns, and he is constitutionally incapable of ignoring a document that contradicts something he believed to be settled. He will pull the thread. He will not pull it loudly. He will begin a quiet investigation that runs parallel to everything else and does not, yet, connect to Palpatine by name. That is sufficient. For now. Anakin is in a lightsaber practice session when Windu's expression shifts, barely perceptibly, across the observation level above the training floor. He is watching Anakin's form with the detached evaluation that is his version of attention. Then, something on his wrist calm catches his eye and he looks down, and for 3 seconds nothing moves in his face at all. Anakin performs a slightly imprecise transition on his offhand. A boy his age would make that mistake. He sheathes his training saber and bows to his sparring partner, and goes to change for the afternoon meditation session, and does not look up at the observation level, and does not permit himself to smile, and does not need to. The thread is pulled. The fabric has begun. The war comes anyway. Not the full Clone Wars, not yet, not the decade-long machinery of it, but the preconditions arrive on schedule, grinding into place like gears that have been cut for exactly this purpose. The separatist movement gains momentum. Planets begin to peel away from the Republic in clusters, drawn by Count Dooku's rhetoric of sovereignty and the quiet pressure of Trade Federation credits behind it. The Senate fractures along fault lines that were always there, waiting. Anakin watches it from inside the temple and feels the specific frustration of a man who knows exactly what is coming, and cannot say so without explaining how he knows. He is 13 now. The body has grown into itself somewhat. Taller. The cultish disproportionality of early childhood resolving into something that will eventually be large. His instructors have stopped commenting on his focus and started commenting on his ceiling, which is a different problem. Master Dralig watches his sparring sessions with an expression that sits between professional admiration and personal unease, the look of a teacher who has realized the student stopped needing instruction sometime in the recent past and is now doing something else entirely during the lessons. Obi-Wan notices too. He always notices. He simply takes longer than the others to decide what to do with what he sees. They are on Ryloth when it surfaces directly for the first time. A diplomatic security mission, routine, or designed to read that way. Until it isn't. A separatist-aligned faction has taken a Republic envoy and 3 staff members and moved them into the old city's lower district. A warren of narrow streets and stacked construction that has been weaponizing itself against occupying forces for 3,000 years. The Jedi assignment is 2 Padawans and their masters, a show of good faith presence that is meant to signal capability without triggering escalation. The plan breaks on contact. It always does. The faction has more fighters than the intelligence suggested, not dramatically more. Not enough to constitute an ambush exactly, but enough to close off the primary extraction route 30 seconds after Anakin and Obi-Wan move into the district. 2 other routes remain. Anakin runs the geometry in his head in the time it takes Obi-Wan to register the blockade and begin reassessing. Secondary route, Obi-Wan says. Through the market. The market opens into a courtyard with 1 exit. Anakin says, we'd be contained, a half beat. The drainage channel then takes us past their secondary position. They've got 3 shooters on the building above the channel entrance. I counted them coming in. Obi-Wan looks at him. Not with irritation, with the particular quality of attention he reserves for moments that don't quite fit the frame he has built. You counted them coming in, he repeats. Habit, Anakin says. He keeps his voice easy, the response of a diligent student attributing results to methodology. Master Dralig says to assess every room. Master Dralig means the sparring hall. The principal generalizes. There is a moment. Obi-Wan deciding something, or perhaps beginning to decide it. The first stone turned in a process that will take years to complete. Then, what do you suggest? Anakin suggests the Eastern Service Corridor, which runs behind the market and connects to a loading platform that offers elevation, cover, and an approach angle that puts them behind the faction's primary position rather than in front of it. He suggests it in 17 words, without hedging, in the tone of a man reading from a map he has already memorized. They take the Eastern Service Corridor. The extraction takes 11 minutes. Nobody on their side is injured. Afterward, the other Padawan, a Thalothian girl named Densa Vel, sharp and competitive and not yet skilled enough to conceal it, looks at Anakin with an expression he recognizes. It is the expression people wore when Darth Vader arrived on their bridge. Not fear precisely. The thing that precedes fear, when the mind hasn't yet decided whether to run or align itself. He gives her his mildest look, and says nothing, and she turns away first. The Padawan trials at 14 produce a result that prompts 3 masters to independently request the council review his assessment scores. Not because the scores are suspicious. Because they are perfect. Not high, perfect. The margin of error in a Padawan assessment is architectural, built into the test design. Because the Jedi Order does not produce children who score perfectly on Padawan trials at 14. The assumption has not required examination in recorded history. The council examines his assessment scores. They convene briefly. Yoda says, accelerated. His development is natural. This may be, in one of his potential. He says it looking at something above and to the left of the middle distance, which is his way of signaling that he believes what he has said and does not believe it contains the whole truth. Mace Windu says nothing. He has been saying nothing about Anakin Skywalker for 8 months, in the particular way that means he is watching. Anakin is called before the council 3 weeks after the scores are reviewed. It is framed as a commendation, the Ryloth extraction, the assessment results, a general acknowledgement of progress. He stands in the circle of chairs and answers questions with the precise deference of a student who has spent 46 years learning exactly what deference looks like from the inside of the receiving end. Yoda's eyes rest on him for a long moment. At peace, you seem, Yoda says. More than is usual. I try to be, Master Yoda. Trying, Yoda says slowly, is not the same as being. He tilts his head. Which is it, young Skywalker? The question is genuine. Anakin has underestimated Yoda's precision before. The first time, in another life, it cost him everything. He meets the ancient eyes and gives the most carefully true answer he possesses. Both, Master, depending on the day. Yoda holds his gaze for 3 seconds longer than necessary. Then he nods. Once, and moves to the next item. Anakin keeps his breathing measured, and his surface thoughts clean until he is out of the chamber and 2 corridors away. Obi-Wan finds him on the observation deck again. It has become a place between them, not arranged, just where they both go when the temple feels too much like the temple. "You handled that well," Obi-Wan says. "Which part?" "All of it." He leans on the rail. Below, Coruscant performs its endless, indifferent motion. The Council. The assessment. Ryloth. He is quiet for a moment. "I've been a Padawan's master for 4 years. I had a previous Padawan. I know what the process looks like." Anakin waits. "You don't make mistakes," Obi-Wan says. He says it without accusation, which makes it more precise than an accusation would be. Padawans make mistakes. It's not a flaw in the system, it's how learning works. The mistake is the lesson. But you, he stops. Your mistakes are so clean, so contained. Always exactly the kind of mistake a gifted student would make, landed just where it would teach the right lesson and nowhere else. The night air sits between them. Anakin looks out at the city for a long moment. He constructs his response carefully, not a deflection, because Obi-Wan will see through a deflection and it will cost more than the truth risks. Something adjacent to honesty, something that is true and incomplete at once. "I've thought about things a lot," he says finally. "I've had time in my head. Growing up the way I did, there wasn't much to do on Tatooine except think." He pauses. "I don't know how to explain it better than that." Obi-Wan studies him. The warm, wry face in its evaluating mode. Present, kind, and seeing more than it confirms it sees. "You talk to me," he says quietly, like a man who already knows how the conversation ends. The words land somewhere the mask does not fully cover. Anakin absorbs them without moving, without the shift of breath that would register as reaction. But the accuracy of it goes deep. He does. He knows every conversation with Obi-Wan Kenobi to its last syllable. Knows the ones that never happened. The ones that were said wrong, the ones he replayed in the suit in the dark in the years after. Revising? "I just pay attention," Anakin says. Obi-Wan nods. Slowly. He does not look convinced. He does not look unconvinced. He looks like a man storing something for later examination, the way a careful person presses a flower, preserving the shape of a thing without yet knowing what it means. He pushes off the rail. "Come on." Early morning forms tomorrow. Anakin follows him inside. Behind him, Coruscant continues its motion, indifferent and endless and whole. Geonosis is red. Not the red of sunset or warning lights, the red of a planet that has been the color of dried blood since before the Republic had a name for it. The rock formations rise in jagged columns above the arena floor, and the twin suns hit them at an angle that makes the shadows look carved rather than cast. The air is dry and mineral, tasting of iron and dust, and 40,000 Geonosians fill the tiered stands in a mass of chitinous wings and clicking approval. The arena smells like something that has been dying in the heat for a long time. Anakin stands in the center of it on a stone pillar, chains at his wrists, and feels almost nothing. The creature below, a Nexu, 400 pounds of feline aggression and keratin plates, paces the base of the pillar and regards him with the flat, patient intelligence of an animal that has done this before and knows how it ends. He lets it pace. He is watching the stands. Across the arena, Padmé hangs from her own pillar. She has already begun working the chain. He can see the angle of her shoulders, the deliberate micro-movements, the systematic assessment of the metal. She is extraordinary. He has known this for 23 years, and it hits him the same way every time, this particular quality of her. The refusal, cellular and absolute, to accept the geometry of a situation that other people would already be calling fixed. He loves her with the simple, devastating constancy of a man who watched her die. Obi-Wan is on the third pillar. His expression is the controlled, evaluating calm of a Jedi who has decided to wait before spending resources. Smart. Correct. The same patience that will one day make him the most dangerous man in the galaxy, if the galaxy survives long enough. The Nexu gathers itself below him, hindquarters dropping, weight shifting to the rear legs. Anakin looks up at the stands. In the Chancellor's private box, half occluded by shadow, Palpatine watches with an expression calibrated to concerned neutrality. Around him, Trade Federation officials. Newt Gunray's pale, nervous presence. And at the box's edge, barely visible from this angle, Dooku, white-haired, patrician, his stillness the stillness of absolute confidence, watching the arena floor with the aesthetic appreciation of a man attending theater. The Nexu leaps. Anakin reaches into the Force and takes it out of the air. The creature freezes 3 meters above the ground, suspended, all 4 legs cycling against nothing. It weighs 400 pounds, and the telekinetic hold costs him something, a pull in the muscles behind his eyes. The familiar compound fatigue of holding the mask and the Force simultaneously, but the hold is complete. He rotates it, once checking the restraint, then sets it down on the arena floor with a precision that wastes nothing. A flick of his fingers, applied to the brainstem. The Nexu drops and does not move again. In the stands, silence, then the clicking. The Geonosian crowd registering something outside their expected parameters. Anakin snaps the chain at his wrists. Not force, just leverage, identifying the weak point in the link's cast and applying the exact force vector that will separate it cleanly. A trick from his first year in the suit, when he was learning the limits of his prosthetic grip by taking things apart. He drops from the pillar. The battle arrives on schedule. The Republic gunships breach the arena perimeter and the floor becomes a controlled disaster. Clone troopers deploying in disciplined columns, Jedi igniting blades across the stand entrances, the Geonosian crowd evacuating in a shrieking mass above. Padmé reaches him before any of the clones do, because of course she does. And for 3 seconds she simply looks at him with an expression that contains relief and something else, the same undefinable quality she has always carried, that particular way she assesses a situation and the people in it with simultaneous precision. "Are you hurt?" she asks. "No," he says. "You?" "I've had worse mornings." She is already moving, picking up a fallen blaster, orienting herself toward the primary exit route. He watches her for exactly 1 second before following. The route to Dooku takes 8 minutes through a Geonosian command bunker, 3 squads of battle droids, and a collapsed corridor that requires a controlled force push to clear the debris without bringing the ceiling down. He does it in 2 moves. The clone trooper sergeant behind him makes a note on his helmet display and says nothing. Dooku is in the hangar. He is expecting Obi-Wan. Anakin can see it in his posture, the theatrical readiness of a duelist preparing for a specific opponent, the weight slightly forward, the cape arranged for maximum visual effect. Dooku has fought Obi-Wan before, knows his style, has already mapped the encounter. Anakin walks through the hangar entrance alone. Dooku looks at him. Something recalibrates in the pale eyes. He takes in the boy, 15 years old by every external indicator, a Padawan braid, a build not yet fully grown into itself, and adjusts his posture with the elegant efficiency of a man who has never seen a threat he couldn't rank and accommodate. "The Padawan," Dooku says. "Skywalker, isn't it?" "Yes. Where is your master?" "Behind me. He'll be here." "I thought we could start." Dooku's mouth moves in something that is not quite a smile. He reaches into his robe and produces the curved hilt, elegant, custom, the weapon of a man who duels with aesthetic intentionality and ignites the crimson blade. "Bold child," he says. "Let's see if the Jedi's prodigy can back his confidence." Anakin ignites his blade. He does not move first. He waits, 1 breath, 2, and reads Dooku's opening commitment, the slight leading of the left shoulder that precedes his preferred opening, the theatrical lunge that converts immediately into a lateral draw. He has seen this twice in memory. He steps offline, lets the blade pass, and answers with a bind that catches Dooku's saber at the midpoint and redirects it down and away. Dooku disengages, reassesses. His expression does not change, but something does. The slight widening of focus, a duelist recognizing that his opening has been anticipated. He attacks again. Faster this time, the full vocabulary of Form 2, Makashi at its most precise, thrusts and parries designed for single-blade opponents, built on the assumption that overwhelming technical elegance will find the gap in a less trained response. It is the correct strategy against a 15-year-old Padawan. Anakin doesn't give him a 15-year-old Padawan. He meets each technique with the exact counter, not the flashy counter, not the aggressive counter, the minimum effective counter, the one that spends the least energy while denying Dooku the leverage his next combination requires. Economy of motion. Nothing wasted. Each parry closing a door rather than opening one. Dooku advances and finds nothing to find. He is fighting a maze that keeps restructuring itself in front of him. The gap opens 40 seconds in, when Dooku attempts a feint into disengage combination that works against Obi-Wan's Ceresu every time, because Ceresu's defensive nature creates a beat of non-response that the combination exploits. Against Anakin, the non-response doesn't come. He reads the feint, ignores it, and enters the space Dooku's blade vacated in the disengage with a direct crossing strike that catches the curved hilt at its guard. The red blade hits the floor. The Force catches it before it lands and holds it there, inert, 2 meters, to Dooku's left. Dooku stands. Disarmed, his chest rises and falls with the controlled breathing of a man applying discipline to something that wants very much to be panic. He looks at the boy in front of him, the unscarred face, the Padawan braid, the blue blade held without flourish, and the thing that moves through his eyes is not fear. It is something more specific than fear. It is the look of a man encountering something he cannot explain and realizing the explanation will cost him. "Who are you?" Dooku says. He asks it the way the question actually deserves to be asked. Not rhetorically, not with contempt or dramatics, as a genuine, urgent request for information from a man whose model of the world has just developed a crack he needs to understand before it widens. Anakin holds the Force lock steady and looks at him. "Someone who knows what you are," Anakin says, "and everything you're going to do. And who sent you?" The crack widens. Behind them, Obi-Wan arrives in the hangar entrance and stops. He takes in the scene, Dooku disarmed and held without visible effort by his 15-year-old Padawan, and his face does the thing it does now, more frequently. With longer duration, the stillness that is not calm, the looking that is trying to understand what it is looking at. He does not speak. He watches. In the stands above the arena, in the box that is already emptying, the Chancellor of the Republic sits for 3 seconds longer than everyone else. His eyes are on the hangar entrance. His face is Chancellor neutral, the practiced composite of concern and confidence that has been his public expression for 11 years. Beneath it, for the first time, something moves that he does not intend. The plan was not supposed to produce this. The holding facility on Coruscant's government district has no windows. This is deliberate, a design philosophy that treats natural light as a variable the Republic would prefer not to introduce into proceedings requiring controlled outcomes. The walls are pale gray durasteel, the lighting flat and sourceless. The temperature maintained at exactly the point where discomfort begins to register, without rising to the level of a formal complaint. It is a room engineered to remind its occupant that the architecture itself has taken a position. Dooku sits in the center of it with the composure of a man who has decided that composure is the only currency he has left. He is still wearing the travel clothes from Geonosis, the dark layered cloth, the Count's bearing intact even under the flat lighting. His hands folded on the table with the deliberate stillness of a man choosing where to put them rather than a man who doesn't know. His face is neutral. His eyes, moving between Obi-Wan at the door and Anakin across the table, are doing precise, continuous work. Obi-Wan speaks first. He is good at this, the measured, reasonable opening, the tone that establishes cooperation as the available path, without making it sound like a demand. He covers the formal ground, the charges, the scope of Republic interest, the Council's position on Dooku's future, the framework within which information might affect outcome. He is warm and exact and gives nothing away, and Dooku listens to all of it with the patience of a man waiting for the weather to change. Then Obi-Wan finishes and Dooku says, "I would like to speak with legal representation." "Of course," Obi-Wan says. "I wasn't finished," Anakin says. A pause. Obi-Wan looks at him. Dooku looks at him. The quality of the room's silence shifts, not dramatically, just the particular adjustment of a space in which someone has said something unexpected. Anakin leans forward slightly. He keeps his hands flat on the table, open, unthreatening. His voice is level even, the tone of a student in a discussion rather than an interrogator in a room. He has learned from Palpatine, who learned from centuries of Sith that the most disarming register is the one that seems to ask nothing. You studied under Master Yoda for years, Anakin says, before you left the Order. He pauses. What did you learn about how masters treat their apprentices? Dooku's eyes settle on him with a new quality. Interest, possibly, or the precursor to it. The recognition that the question is not where he expected the conversation to go. A philosophical opening, Dooku says, from a child. I'm 15, Anakin says. And it's not philosophical. I'm asking what you observed. Yoda invested decades in you. What did he do with that investment? He wasted it, Dooku says. The Order's rigidity, he trusted you. Anakin says. Completely, he advocated for you in council chambers. He gave you access that other Padawans didn't have. He believed you were exceptional. He lets that sit for one breath. Is that what your current master has done? The word current lands precisely where he aimed it, not because it is a surprise. Dooku knows his Sith identity is the reason he is in this room, but because Anakin has used it as an assumption rather than an accusation, which is a different kind of pressure. It removes the option to deny and replaces it with the implicit question of degree. Dooku says nothing. His hands remain folded. The rule of two. Anakin continues. One master, one apprentice. The apprentice exists to grow strong enough to kill the master. That's the design. Not a flaw in it. The actual architecture. The apprentice is the master's final project, and the master's planned obsolescence. He tilts his head. You know this. You've known it since you took the title. Which means you've known, since the beginning, that your master's long-term plan for you isn't succession. Behind Anakin, Obi-Wan is very still. Dooku's composure is intact, but the work of maintaining it has become visible. A slight increase in the stillness of his hands, the kind of absolute quiet that requires active production. You're suggesting Sidious intended to discard me, he says. Controlled. Flat. I'm not suggesting it, Anakin says. I'm telling you that I know it. I know the shape of his plan. I know what role you play in it, and I know what happens to you when that role is complete. He has a replacement already. He pauses. He's been grooming the replacement for years. Someone younger. More powerful. More malleable. Another pause, calibrated. Someone he can break properly this time, instead of inheriting a man with his own convictions. This is true. Every word of it. That is what makes it land. Not the delivery, not the framing, but the specific, verifiable texture of something that isn't a bluff. Dooku looks at him for a long moment. You're 15 years old, he says again. But differently this time. I know things I shouldn't, Anakin agrees. That must be uncomfortable to sit with. He leans back. You built something real, you know. The Separatist coalition, the grievances underneath it are genuine, even if the structure serving those grievances is a trap. Planets that felt unheard by the Senate. Systems the Republic treated as extraction territories rather than members. Those complaints don't disappear when this is over. He lets his voice stay even. But you won't be there to see what happens to them. That was never part of the plan. The silence runs long. Obi-Wan does not speak. Anakin can feel him. The specific quality of his master's attention, the way it is focused and still and radiating, very quietly, something that is the Jedi equivalent of held breath. This is the fourth time in 15 years that Obi-Wan Kenobi has encountered something his Padawan has done that he cannot explain with the tools he has, and each time the unexplained space has grown, and each time he has filed it rather than asked. He is running out of file space. Dooku's hands unfold. It is a small movement, practical rather than theatrical. He reaches across the table and sets his palms flat, mirroring Anakin's posture from earlier, which is either unconscious or a choice, and with Dooku it is impossible to determine which. His eyes have lost the quality of active defense and gained something older and more tired. The encryption architecture, he says. For Sidious's primary communication network runs through 3 relay nodes. The authentication keys cycle on a 72-hour interval. He pauses. The current keys are in my coat lining. Left side. There is a carbon fiber document case sewn into the lining, not the lining itself, the substrate beneath it. Republic scanners won't register it as anything except reinforced fabric. Obi-Wan crosses to the door, speaks briefly to the guard outside. Dooku looks at Anakin. The replacement you mentioned, he says. You're him, aren't you? Anakin holds his gaze and says nothing. That's why you know, Dooku says. He says it quietly, working it out in real time, the disciplined mind applying itself to the only geometry that fits. You know the plan because you're inside it. Or were. He studies the 15-year-old face across the table with the focus of a man trying to read a language he doesn't speak. What are you? Someone who chose differently, Anakin says. Dooku absorbs this. He nods once with a slowness that belongs to a much older gesture, a man acknowledging a thing he cannot fully see but recognizes by shape. Something like respect moves through his expression and resolves into something sadder. Then you're more dangerous than he is, Dooku says. He says it without apparent irony. As a simple assessment. The guard returns with Dooku's coat. The document case is exactly where he said it would be. 2 days later, the decrypted files reach Mace Windu, not through Anakin. Through 3 layers of Republic intelligence processing, through the authentication keys cycling exactly as Dooku described, through a series of communication logs that connect Sidious's relay network to a Coruscant-registered executive communication address that has been active for 11 years. Windu reads the first 40 pages in his office, without moving. Then he closes the file, sits back, and looks at the wall for a very long time. He calls an emergency session of the full council. He does not tell them what it contains. He tells them they need to read it before he will discuss it, because he is not willing to say the conclusion out loud until every other member has arrived at it independently. He tells them to clear their schedules. He tells them this will take a while. On the way out of his office, before the first master arrives, he pauses in the corridor and looks in the direction of the Padawan training quarters for exactly 3 seconds. Then he walks on. The Chancellor's office feels different at night. During the day it performs grandeur, the amber light, the dark wood. The windows framing the Senate district like a painting composed by someone who understood that power should always have a backdrop. At night, the performance thins. The city lights outside are cold and blue, and they come through the windows at an angle that cuts rather than warms, laying pale geometric shapes across the floor. The desk looks larger in the dark. The room looks like what it is, a place where decisions are made that most people will never know about, in the service of plans most people will never see. Palpatine stands at the window when Anakin enters. He does not turn immediately. This is deliberate, the slight theatrical delay, the posture of a man deep in thought who surfaces reluctantly from important concerns to address the person who has arrived. Anakin has seen this particular entrance 50 times. He waits at parade rest, hands loose at his sides, and watches the city lights behind the Chancellor's reflected silhouette. Anakin, Palpatine says, and turns. The voice is warm. The face is warm. The posture opens in welcome, a subtle thing, the shoulder angle shifting outward, the hands coming up slightly, the body language of a man making room. He crosses the office and stops at the correct distance, close enough for intimacy without crowding, and his eyes do their work, reading, assessing. Finding the Anakin Skywalker he has built a decade of architecture around, and confirming that he is still here, still present, still the boy he shaped. He finds nothing wrong. This is because Anakin spent 3 hours this morning reinforcing the mask. The cost sits behind his eyes as a steady pressure. Not pain exactly. Something more like the feeling of holding a heavy object at arm's length for an extended period. The muscles functional but aware of the weight. He ignores it. He has ignored worse. I apologize for the hour, Palpatine says. I hope I didn't pull you from anything important. Not at all, Your Excellency. Palpatine gestures toward the chairs. They sit, the familiar configuration, the same arrangement that began in the year after Naboo, which Palpatine has maintained with the patience of a horticulturist who understands that certain plants require consistent conditions. The boy across from him has grown. He is 17 now, broad-shouldered, the face settling into its adult geometry. He will be remarkable looking. Which Palpatine has always known and filed as a variable, beauty being one of many tools a Sith Master keeps in reserve. I wanted to speak with you, Palpatine begins, about recent events. The council session, Anakin says. A pause. One beat. Yes, he keeps his voice level, the measured weight of a man addressing a difficult topic with appropriate gravity. I understand the Jedi have been conducting an investigation, that certain materials have come to their attention. He folds his hands in his lap. I want you to know, Anakin, that whatever they've told you, whatever conclusions they may be drawing, I value our relationship too much to allow misunderstandings to. I haven't been told anything, Anakin says. The Council doesn't brief Padawans on active intelligence operations. Of course. Palpatine adjusts without visible effort. The smile returns, warmer now, more rueful. A man who overstepped slightly and is charming his way back to firm ground. I only mean that these are complicated times. People with complicated agendas can make a great deal of evidence point in a great many directions. Anakin nods, the nod of a young man taking this seriously. Palpatine watches him take it seriously, and something, very deep behind the performance, decides. He has been deciding for 3 weeks. Since Geonosis, since Dooku's capture, since the files began moving through channels that should have been impossible to access. The plan has developed a fracture, and he has been applying pressure at various points to find its shape. A tightened observation schedule here, a redirected intelligence asset there, subtle increases in the sensitivity of his mental probes during his meetings with the boy, looking for the edge of something that shouldn't exist. He has found nothing. The mask holds and holds and holds. But the fracture is real. And the fracture has Anakin Skywalker's handwriting on it. Not provably. Not yet. But Palpatine did not become the most powerful being in the galaxy by waiting for proof before acting. He became it by acting precisely at the moment when the geometry became undeniable, and the geometry has become undeniable. He has one asset remaining, one tool that has never failed, the seduction of truth, the moment where the mask comes off and the real offer lands. He begins. You are extraordinary, Palpatine says. Not the practiced warmth of mentorship, something lower, quieter, more exposed. A register Anakin has not heard from him before, designed to read as the register beneath the register. The real voice, the man under the Chancellor. I have known this since you were 9 years old, and I looked into your eyes across a ballroom on Naboo and saw something that should not have been there. Anakin is very still. The Jedi will never give you what you deserve. Palpatine continues. You know this. You have always known this. I have watched you feel it. In every council chamber, every assessment. Every moment where the small men around you looked at your gifts and felt afraid rather than grateful. They will use you. They are already using you. And when the war they're sleepwalking into arrives, they will spend you in service of a republic that is already dying. He pauses. Because they can't see what I can see, what I have always seen. And what's that? Anakin asks. That you were made for more than service. Palpatine's voice carries the full weight of a decade's rehearsal. This speech, or versions of it, has been his endgame since a boy climbed out of a pod racer on Tatooine and tested off every chart the Jedi had. There is a power that the Jedi have deliberately hidden from you. They call it the dark side, and they dress that name in fear, because fear is how you keep exceptional men small. But it is simply the full spectrum of the Force, life and death, creation and destruction, the complete instrument rather than the half they've permitted you to play. He leans forward. His eyes are steady and direct, and hold in them the particular light of total conviction, the most dangerous thing a liar can possess. I am Darth Sidious, he says. He says it the way a man confesses love, the weight of a secret finally surrendered. I have waited a very long time to say that to you. I am the last of a tradition of power that the Jedi have spent 1,000 years trying to erase, and I am offering you everything they have spent 1,000 years withholding. His voice drops to something almost gentle. The strength to save the people you love. The knowledge to stop death itself. The galaxy, Anakin, shaped by your hands and mine, into something that doesn't waste people the way it has wasted you. He finishes. The offer sits in the room between them like an object set down on a table. Palpatine watches the boy's face and reads for the responses he has catalogued and predicted. The conflict, the hunger, the old wound of the fatherless child who wanted to be seen opening under the attention of someone who claims to finally see him. He has rehearsed the specific sequence of Anakin's capitulation so many times that he can feel the shape of it from the inside. Anakin looks at him. He says nothing. The silence stretches 5 seconds. 10, 15. In the cold blue light from the windows, the boy's face is unreadable. Not conflicted, not hungry, not the architecture of a young man at war with himself. Simply present. Waiting. The eyes level and still in a way that has no analog in the decade of expressions Palpatine has filed under Skywalker. 20 seconds. Palpatine's hands remain folded in his lap. His breathing stays measured. His face holds the posture of patient openness, the offer extended, waiting to be received. 30 seconds. Something moves in the Chancellor's chest that he has not felt in a very long time. It does not have a name yet. It is the thing that arrives when a man realizes, without yet being able to prove it, that the ground he is standing on is not where he thought it was. The boy across from him watches him feel it, and still says nothing. Anakin smiles. It is not a warm smile. It is not cruel either. Cruelty would require him to enjoy this, and what he feels standing in the cold blue light of the Chancellor's office is nothing so simple as enjoyment. It is the feeling of a door opening that has been sealed for 8 years. The specific physical sensation of a held breath finally released after so long that the lungs have forgotten what release felt like. He lets the mask go, not gradually. All at once, the way a man removes a coat he has worn so long it has shaped itself to him, peeling it free in one deliberate motion and setting it down. The surface layer, the performance, the careful architecture of the 9-year-old boy who was grateful and awed and hungry for the approval of a great man, all of it lifts. And what remains sitting in the chair across from Sheev Palpatine is not a 17-year-old Padawan. Palpatine feels it. He feels it the way a sensor array feels a ship dropping out of hyperspace, not the ship itself, but the displacement, the sudden presence of something that was not in the calculation. His hands unfold in his lap. A small movement, involuntary, the body registering information the mind hasn't processed yet. I've known, Anakin says, since the day I met you on Naboo, Sidious. The name lands in the room with the weight of the thing it actually is, not an accusation, not a dramatic reveal, just a word used correctly for the first time in the presence of its owner. Palpatine does not move. His face holds its shape through what must be an extraordinary act of will, the decades of discipline applied to keeping the surface intact while the structure beneath it undergoes something catastrophic. Known, Palpatine repeats. The voice has lost its warmth, not gone cold, simply emptied, the register of a man buying seconds while the mind works. That is a significant claim. It isn't a claim, Anakin says. I'm not trying to convince you of something. You know what you are. I know what you are. The only thing left to discuss is whether you understand what that means for this conversation. He pauses. Outside the windows, Coruscant continues its indifferent motion, 10 trillion lives conducting themselves with no awareness of the two people in this room and the thing being said between them. I want to tell you something, Anakin says. Not because it will change anything, because you have spent 10 years constructing a story about me, who I am, what I want, where I am going. And I think you should know the shape of what you got wrong before this ends. Palpatine is very still. In another life, Anakin says, you won. He says it simply, without drama, without the gloating register of a man delivering a reversal. He says it the way he would state a tactical fact. Weight and no embellishment. You turned me. Not here, later, when I was 19, And the woman I loved was in danger, and you were the only person offering the one thing that might save her. You told me the dark side could stop death. You told me love was the path, and the Jedi were the obstacle, and you were the only one who understood what I was willing to do to protect her. He stops, breathes. And I believed you. I killed for you. I burned for you. On a planet called Mustafar, I murdered people I had known my entire life because you told me it was necessary, and when it was done, you left me there. The thing in Palpatine's chest has a name now. He can feel it finding one. I lost both legs and one arm and most of my lungs on that planet. Anakin continues. You put what was left of me in a suit of black armor and kept me alive because I was useful, and I served you for 23 years in that suit. And she, his voice doesn't break. He is long past the place where it breaks. She died. Not from what I did to her directly. From losing hope. From the end of something. And I didn't know that for years, because you told me I killed her, and I believed you because it felt true, and I couldn't verify it from inside the armor. Palpatine's face has changed. The architecture of it, the careful arrangement of controlled affect, the Chancellor's composite of warmth and gravity that has served as his public face for 3 decades, has developed fractures that the discipline is no longer sufficient to conceal. His eyes are working, moving through the information, and what moves behind them is not the fear of exposure. It is something raw. The specific terror of a man who has built his entire life on the premise that he is the one in the room who sees clearly, encountering the possibility that he has been blind. You had a son, Anakin says. I didn't know about him until he was grown. You used him against me, used the knowledge of him, the threat of him, because you understood that was the lever. He came to me on the second Death Star. He believed there was something left to reach. You were going to kill him, and I picked you up, and I threw you into the reactor shaft, and I died on the floor of your ship with my son's hand on my face. He stops. The room holds it. That is the story you wrote for me, Anakin says. Every page of it, from Naboo to Endor. You wrote it, and I performed it, and at the end the only true thing I ever did was the last thing, and it cost me everything I had left. Palpatine does not speak. His composure is intact in the technical sense. He has not moved, has not made a sound, has not allowed the face to fully abandon its structure. But the eyes have changed. Whatever lives behind them has retreated to somewhere deep and narrow, pressed back by the weight of what it is hearing. And what remains on the surface is something Anakin has never seen there before. Not anger, not calculation. Fear, clean and unprocessed and entirely genuine, the fear of a man standing in the dark realizing the walls are much closer than he thought. You don't have a counter to this, Anakin says. I want you to understand that clearly. Not because I want you afraid. I don't need you afraid. I need you to comprehend what has actually happened here, so that when this is over there is no version of events in which you believe you almost won. He leans forward, just slightly. You had 8 years. 8 years in which I sat across from you in this room and let you believe the performance was real. And in that time I pulled every thread you ever laid. I built a case that 12 Jedi Masters have now spent 2 days reading, and I made sure that every piece of architecture you constructed for this war, the clone army, the inhibitor chips, Dooku, the separatist funding, has been documented, authenticated, and placed in the hands of people who cannot be intimidated or bought. Palpatine's right hand moves, a small motion. The arm of the chair, then away from it, a tell, the first physical tell Anakin has ever seen him produce unintentionally. The hand moving toward and then away from something, without completing the gesture. A weapon. A comm unit. A contingency, hidden somewhere in the chair's architecture, which is exactly the kind of thing Palpatine would build into the furniture of his own office. Anakin notes it, files it, does not react to it. I'm not going to kill you, Anakin says. I considered it. For 8 years I considered it. The first night on Naboo, every meeting in this room, every time you smiled at me and I held the mask in place and thought about how easy it would be. He pauses. but Darth Vader would have killed you. Quietly, impulsively, the moment he was certain. And Darth Vader burned a galaxy. He shakes his head. The Republic needs to see you. Not dead, tried, exposed, standing in front of a court with the evidence laid out, in the light, where it cannot be buried or rewritten. Dead, you become a martyr and a mystery. Alive, you become a lesson. He stands. The Jedi Council has been briefed, he says. Masters Windu, Yoda, and Kenobi are in the building. They are coming here now. I asked them for 20 minutes to say this to you first, because I needed you to hear it from me before it becomes an arrest and a legal proceeding and a historical record. He looks at Palpatine, this small, afraid, extraordinary man who built a trap so large it fit an entire civilization inside it, and what he feels is not triumph. It is the feeling he felt on the floor of a shuttle with his son's hand on his face. The specific terrible piece of finishing. It's over, Anakin says. Not just the plan. All of it. The rule of two ends here. Palpatine's hand completes its motion. The hidden compartment in the chair opens. The lightning comes without preamble. No speech, no threat. No final positioning of the chess pieces into their dramatic arrangement. Palpatine has been stripped of theater, and what remains is the animal underneath it, and the animal's only remaining language is force. The compartment in the chair releases and his hands come up, and the lightning erupts from his fingers in a continuous, crackling stream that crosses the office in less than a heartbeat. Anakin's blade is already lit. Blue, the color catches the lightning and holds it. Not deflecting, absorbing. The blade drinking the current and dispersing it through the hilt's energy sink in a controlled bleed that costs him nothing except attention. He has blocked Force lightning before. He blocked it on the Death Star floor with his son's life in the balance and terror in every cell he had left. Here, now, in a body that works and a mind that is not fractured by 2 decades of darkness, the block is almost easy. Almost. The current is immense. Palpatine is not performing. He pushes forward 2 steps, angled, keeping the blade between himself and the source. And the lightning crawls across the office ceiling and scars the dark wood paneling and blows out 3 of the overhead lights in sequence, and the room drops to cold blue emergency lighting that makes everything look like the inside of a wreck. Palpatine is standing now, both hands extended, his face no longer any version of the Chancellor, no warmth, no composure, no architecture at all. Just the Sith underneath, the one that has been underneath for 80 years, the one that Darth Plagueis found and named and built and was eventually killed by. Anakin takes the 3rd step and ends the distance. He doesn't swing for the body. He swings for the hands, a crossing motion, precise, the blade angled to catch both wrists in the same arc without following through to tissue. A disarming technique rather than a killing one. Palpatine pulls back, and the lightning cuts off, and he reaches for something inside his robe, and Anakin's left hand finds his wrist before the weapon clears the fabric. He holds it. The grip is not the grip of a 17-year-old. Palpatine looks at the hand on his wrist, and then at the face above it, and makes a sound, not a word, not a threat. Something below language, the sound of a man whose last calculation has returned its result, and the result is unacceptable. He unleashes everything. The Force radiates off him in a concussive wave, not targeted, not tactical, pure emission. The last resort of a Sith who has decided to spend whatever is left. It hits Anakin in the chest and throws him backward across the desk and into the far wall. And the breath leaves his body on impact, and his back registers the wall with a pain that is clean and immediate and real. The blade stays lit. He pulls it around as he comes off the wall and catches a second wave on the flat of it, and redirects the pressure sideways, into the window behind Palpatine, which shatters outward into the Coruscant night. Cold air floods the room. Palpatine stands in the gap where the window was, city lights behind him, wind moving his robes, his hands raised again. He looks, in this moment, exactly like what he is, ancient and desperate and extraordinarily dangerous, and cornered by something he created and cannot now control. His eyes find Anakin across the ruined office, and in them is the final configuration of a mind that has spent 80 years in total confidence, encountering the concept of defeat for the first time. He makes the choice Anakin knew he would make. He throws himself forward. The last lightsaber technique Palpatine was trained in was Juyo, the most aggressive of the 7 forms. Built on the principle that the Force enhancer's emotional state is a weapon, that rage and desperation pressed into a blade creates an unpredictability that defense cannot fully model. Against most opponents, at Palpatine's level of mastery, it works. Against an opponent who has felt Darth Vader's Juyo from the inside, from the receiving end across 20 years of servitude, it does not. Anakin reads the pattern in the first 3 exchanges and stops defending. He steps into the 4th strike rather than away from it, inside the arc, and catches Palpatine's blade hand at the elbow with his free hand while his own blade performs the crossing disarm, the same technique as before, completed this time. The red blade drops. The Force takes it and holds it 2 meters away and keeps it there. Palpatine stands, disarmed, the wind through the broken window moving his robes, his chest working with the labor of a man who has spent his reserves, his hands at his sides. He looks at Anakin, this boy, this 17-year-old with an old man's eyes, and says nothing. His face has resolved into something Anakin never expected to see there. Not fury. Not bargaining. The particular stillness of a man who has completed his assessment and accepted the result. 80 years of patience and precision and absolute commitment to a singular vision, and at the end of it, a child who was supposed to be his masterpiece has turned around and looked at him and seen all the way through. It is, in its way, the most honest Palpatine has ever been. The doors open. Mace Windu comes through first. This is not accidental. Windu at the breach is a tactical statement, the Council's hardest edge presented forward. And he reads the room in 1 second, and his hand goes to his hilt, and his eyes find Palpatine, and they stay there. Behind him, Yoda moves in the unhurried way that is not slowness, the way of a being who has learned that urgency is a condition of those who lack certainty. He takes the room's full measure in the time it takes Windu to cross to a flanking position. Obi-Wan comes through last. He stops just inside the doorway. The office is scarred, blast marks on the walls, 3 lights dead, the window gone, the desk ruined, shattered transparent steel glittering across the floor in the blue emergency lighting. In the center of it, Anakin stands with a lit blade and the red saber of the Supreme Chancellor floating disarmed at his command, and Sheev Palpatine stands 2 meters from him with empty hands and a broken face. Obi-Wan looks at his Padawan. Not with fear, not with the trained evaluation of a Jedi Master assessing a tactical situation, though that is in there too. Operating at its usual quiet efficiency underneath everything else, what crosses his face is something that has been building for 8 years, through every unexplained competence and calibrated imperfection and conversation that ended just before it arrived at its real subject, all of it resolving in one moment into a single, devastating understanding. He knows, not the details, not the mechanism, but the shape of it, the weight that has lived behind his Padawan's eyes since the first day, the oldness of them, the grief they carry for things a child shouldn't know how to grieve. He knows that Anakin has been carrying something immense and private and crushing for the entire duration of their relationship, and that everything Anakin has done, every move in this impossible years-long game, has been done in the service of the people standing in this room. His face does something complicated, something that lives between grief and love and a relief so large it has nowhere to go except inward. He doesn't speak. Windu reaches Palpatine, and the restraints go on with efficient finality, the specific click of binders on a Sith Lord's wrists, possibly the only sound in recorded history that has carried this particular weight. Palpatine submits to it. He has no theater left. Yoda stops beside Anakin and looks up at him for a long moment. The ancient eyes move over the boy's face, with the patience of 900 years applied to a single observation. "Known," Yoda says quietly. "For some time, you have. Carried this alone. You did. It is not a question." Anakin looks down at him. The mask is gone and there is nothing to replace it. Just the face, the real one, the one that has been living under the performance for 8 years, tired and intact and present. "Yes," he says. Yoda holds his gaze. Something moves through the ancient face, not surprise, because Yoda has moved past surprise, but something that might be the Jedi equivalent of awe. The recognition of a thing so far beyond the expected that the usual frameworks for response simply do not apply. Rest now, Yoda says. Enough. It is. Windu moves Palpatine toward the door. The former Chancellor walks. His robes are still immaculate, the discipline of a lifetime applying itself to the last available surface. He does not look at Anakin as he passes. At the threshold he stops. 1 second, no more. His eyes go to the boy one final time across the ruined room, not with malice, not with the promise of contingencies and revenge that has always been the Sith's parting register, with something that has no clean name. The look of a man reviewing an equation that produced an impossible result. Trying to locate where in the calculation the error lives, he doesn't find it. The guards take him through. Obi-Wan crosses the room. He stops in front of Anakin and stands there, and for a moment neither of them speaks, and the wind comes through the broken window and moves through the space between them. Then Obi-Wan puts his hand on Anakin's shoulder. The same hand, the same weight, the same particular warmth. "Tell me," he says quietly, "when you're ready." Anakin looks at the man who has been his brother since before he knew what that word cost, and nods once, and extinguishes his blade. The blue light dies. The room holds the dark. It is enough. The trial lasts 19 days. It is the most attended proceeding in the history of the Republic Senate chamber, not physically, though the gallery fills every session, but across the HoloNet, where an estimated 400 billion people watch at least some portion of it. The evidence is presented by a team of Republic prosecutors working from the document archive Anakin built over 8 years, supplemented by Dooku's testimony, the decrypted communication logs, and the financial records connecting Palpatine's shadow network to the Clone Army's commission, the separatist funding structure, and the deaths of 17 individuals whose files the Republic had closed as accidents. Palpatine does not testify. He sits in the defendant's seat in the same posture he brought to every Senate session for 11 years, the composed, patrician stillness of a man who has decided that dignity is the last sovereign territory, and watches the case against him assembled piece by piece in front of 400 billion people. On the 19th day, the verdict comes in. Anakin is not in the chamber when it happens. He is on the temple's eastern observation deck, where the city sprawls out below in its endless, indifferent motion. And he watches the traffic move in its layered streams, and feels the force settle around him like something breathing. The verdict arrives through Obi-Wan's comm, 2 words, sent without preamble, because Obi-Wan has learned over 8 years that Anakin does not need ceremony. It's done. Anakin puts the comm away and looks at the city for a long moment. Then, he goes inside. Kamino takes 3 weeks to resolve. Master Shakti leads the delegation, her particular combination of patience and exactness making her the correct choice for a negotiation that requires the clones themselves to be treated as parties rather than subjects. The inhibitor chips are the central issue, documented in the archive, explained to the Senate. Their purpose and their trigger finally laid bare in front of the people who commissioned them without knowing what they had commissioned. The clones are informed directly. This is Anakin's specific request to the Council, made quietly and without insistence, which is how he has learned to make requests to the Council when it matters most, not as demands, not as leverage, but as the considered position of someone who has earned the right to be heard. The clone troopers of the Grand Army of the Republic learn, in the same briefing session, that they were designed with a kill switch, and that the kill switch has been found, and that it will be removed. The procedure takes 6 weeks across all active battalions. Commander Cody, who has spent the better part of 3 years developing a professional respect for General Kenobi that he would not call affection, because the word is imprecise for what soldiers feel about the officers they trust with their lives, submits to the procedure on the first day of the Kamino program. He sits in the medical bay and lets a Republic surgeon work, and when it is done he sits quietly for a moment, and then returns to duty. He does not know what Order 66 was. He will never need to. Dooku's fate is decided by the Council in closed session. Exile, not imprisonment, which would require a facility capable of containing a Sith Lord and create a permanent security liability, and not execution, which Anakin argued against on the same grounds he argued against killing Palpatine, A dead Dooku is a figure, a living one is a cautionary record. The planet is Alpin, a temperate, sparsely populated world in the Outer Rim with no strategic value and excellent monitoring infrastructure. He is given a modest residence, a library, and a set of movement restrictions that a man of his age and without a lightsaber will find sufficient. He lives there quietly. He writes. Whether it constitutes penance or simply the occupation of an old man who has run out of gambits, no one who visits him can say with certainty. Anakin visits once. It is a short meeting, 2 hours, and he does not tell Obi-Wan about it until afterward. They drink tea in Dooku's modest kitchen and discuss the history of the Jedi Order with the candor of two people who have seen its failures from the inside, and at the end Dooku says, "You could have been magnificent, you know." In the other version, "I was terrible," Anakin says. Dooku considers this. Yes, he agrees, but magnificently so. Anakin finishes his tea and leaves, and does not go back. The council reforms in the month after the trial. Not dramatically, no single session, no sweeping declaration. It happens the way real change happens in institutions that have existed for 10 millennia, slowly, with significant argument, one amendment at a time. The attachment prohibition is the first to be revisited, and the revisitation is not comfortable. Yoda sits in it with the stillness of a being who has been wrong about large things before and has made a practice of surviving the recognition. Mace Windu argues 3 positions in sequence across 4 sessions before arriving at a 4th he can defend. The outcome is not the abolition of the code. It is the acknowledgement that the code was applied as a blunt instrument where it required precision, and that the difference between attachment and love was a distinction the Order had stopped making. It is not a perfect reform. It is a beginning. Anakin is called before the council 6 weeks after the trial concludes. He stands in the circle of chairs in the morning light, which comes through the windows at its usual angle and lays its usual gold across the floor, and he waits. Mace Windu speaks. He does it without preamble, because preamble has never been his register, and he sees no reason to adopt it now. The council has reviewed the totality of your actions over the past 8 years, Windu says. The intelligence architecture you built, the evidence you gathered, the methods you used, and the methods you declined to use. We have discussed it at length. He pauses. We are not going to pretend we understand all of it, or that we are comfortable with all of it. Anakin says nothing. But we are not, Windu continues, going to pretend we would be standing in this room without it. Yoda looks at him from across the circle. A knight you are, Yoda says. Long overdue this is. He tells Obi-Wan in the evening, on the eastern deck, because that is where they have always had the conversations that matter. He does not tell him everything. He tells him enough, the broad shape of it, the consciousness arriving in a child's body, the memory of a life that ended on a shuttle floor with his son's hand on his face. He tells him about Padmé. He tells him about the suit. He does not tell him the specific nature of every terrible thing that suit's owner did, because the purpose of this conversation is not confession, and Obi-Wan is not a priest. The purpose is the end of the silence between them, which has lasted 8 years and cost more than either of them will name directly. Obi-Wan listens. He does not interrupt. When Anakin finishes, he is quiet for a long moment, and the city moves below them, and the first stars are coming out above the Senate District's light pollution in the places where the sky is dark enough to show them. You talk to me, Obi-Wan says finally, like a man saying goodbye to an old friend. From the very beginning. I know, Anakin says, because you'd already lost me. In the other version. Yes. Obi-Wan absorbs this. His face does something that takes a long time to complete, working through grief and love, and something that is not quite anger, but lives in the same neighborhood, and arriving finally at the expression of a man who has decided that the accounting can wait, and what is in front of him is more important than what was withheld. He puts his hand on Anakin's shoulder. It stays there. You should have told me, he says. I know, Anakin says again. I would have helped. I know that too. Obi-Wan exhales, long, slow. The breath of a man releasing something he has been holding without knowing it for 8 years. "Well," he says, in the tone that has always been his armor and his warmth at once, "you're going to have to live with me being insufferably supportive about this for the rest of our lives." Anakin looks at him. The city light catches the line of his face, unscorched, present. Exactly as it was the day they met on a ship leaving Tatooine, when a 9-year-old with 46 years of memory behind his eyes looked at a 25-year-old Jedi Knight and felt the specific grief of loving someone he already knew how to lose. "I think I can manage that," Anakin says. "The wedding is small. A balcony on Coruscant, at dusk. The sky going amber and deep blue in layers above the Senate district. Padmé wears something simple. She has been fighting political battles in formal dress since she was 14, and has developed a precise appreciation for the occasions that don't require it. Her hair is down." She looks at Anakin across the small gathered group with the expression she has worn since he told her the truth 3 months ago, the one that contains both the weight of what he carried and the decision, made clearly and without drama, that this is where she stands. Obi-Wan officiates. He does it with the slightly self-conscious dignity of a man performing a ceremony he believes in and finds slightly absurd simultaneously, which is his relationship to most things he loves. Padmé's pregnancy is not yet showing. The twins will come in 7 months, born into a galaxy that does not require them to be hidden, raised by parents who are not hunted, growing up with the knowledge of what they are and where they come from, and a father who is present and whole. The ceremony is brief. The sun goes down over Coruscant's endless skyline as it finishes, the last light going gold across the buildings, and Anakin looks out at it. This city, this sky, this specific quality of evening light that he last saw from behind a respirator on a planet he was leaving to burn something down. He breathes the open air. Padmé's hand finds his, warm and certain. He had vowed, on the first night on Naboo, not to kill Palpatine but to unmake him. He kept that vow. He had moved, at 9 years old, to place his mother somewhere safe before the desert took her. He kept that vow. He had promised himself, in the dark alcove of the temple sublevel, in the hour before dawn, over a terminal and 8 years of careful, patient, unglamorous work, that this time, he would protect the people he loved before the fire arrived. He kept that vow too. The stars come out above Coruscant one by one, in the places where the sky is dark enough to show them. He got to keep the promise. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.